Wait a minute. Sure. Can I have a pen? Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to the college readout of the meeting which took place this morning, Wednesday, 23rd of September. I will give the floor to Vice President Schinas, who will do the college readout, and after that he will present, together with Commissioner Johansson, the Pact on Migration and Asylum, which was discussed this morning by the college. Vice President.
Thank you, Dana. Welcome. Let me indeed start with the rest of the college agenda before taking you into the new Pact on Migration and Asylum. Today, the college discussed the upcoming action plans on the Capital Markets Union and the Customs Union, and the new ambitious package on digital finance. Developing our capital markets and ensuring access to market financing will be essential in helping Europe recover from the crisis, and this action plan precisely shows the way out. The digital finance package will boost EU competitiveness and innovation in the financial sector. It will give consumers more choice and opportunities in the financial services and modern payments. My colleague Valdis Dombrovskis will hold a press conference on this package tomorrow after midday. And finally, the new Customs Union Action Plan will make EU customs smarter, more innovative and more efficient, and it will help protect EU revenues and the security, health and prosperity of our citizens and businesses. And our colleague, Commissioner Paolo Gentiloni, will present this package to you on Monday. On other business, the Commission has also decided to create a task force to resolve and help alleviate the emergency situation on Lesbos following the fires at the Moria camp. This new task force will implement a joint pilot with the Greek authorities for new reception facilities, and in line with the framework proposed today in the new Pact, which we will present to you in a minute. This task force will help ensure that migration is managed in an effective way, including adequate living conditions, more certainty, faster procedures, and more balanced responsibility and solidarity sharing. The task force will be based in DG Home and will operate under the responsibility of Commissioner Johansson, but of course this is the result of a series of consultations and discussions that President von der Leyen herself, together with Prime Minister Mitsotakis and Chancellor Merkel, had the opportunity to have these last days. The Commission official who will lead this task force, not to do with the task force, but we have an appointment in DG Home that I also need to announce, which is not related to the task force, is we have a new Deputy Director General in DG Home, and this is our Austrian colleague, Johannes Luchner. Congratulations to him. Finally, before we go to the Pact, on the occasion of the International Day of Sign Languages, I'm happy to announce that today's press conference will also be interpreted into International Sign Language. And we will strive to interpret all weekly college readouts into sign language in the future. So stay tuned. Let me now move quickly to the main policy file of today's agenda, the new Pact on Migration and Asylum. This is an important moment. You know that this is one of the most emblematic flagship initiatives of the von der Leyen College. You know that this has been a long time in the making, but the time for action is now. The problems we see on migration, on Moria, elsewhere, are not because of Europe, but that precisely because they simply symbolize the cost of non-Europe. So the time for action is now, and we are presenting today, together with the Commissioner, a compromise, a landing zone able to bring about an agreement. You have seen and you know well that this is not something that we hatched up bilaterally here at the Berlaymont, but this is the result of extensive consultations and listening exercises. We traveled with the Commissioner to all EU capitals. We met all ministers, heads of state and government. We spent weeks at the European Parliament, and we feel that what we are presenting today crystallizes all the input we received in this long consultation process. In migration, no member state has the same way of experiencing the phenomenon. There are different angles, there are different priorities, there are different voices, there are different views, there is different geography. Each of our member states faces different and unique challenges. And I would also say that no one's concerns are more legitimate than the others. They all deserve to be recognized, acknowledged, and addressed. And that's precisely what we're doing today. We have also learned the lessons of 2016, the wounds of 2016, and the failure of the European Union to foster an agreement then is also very present with us. That's why we need to start with everyone on board and everyone around the table. As the President said minutes ago, solidarity and responsibility are the two pillars that guide this package. And in Europe, solidarity and responsibility should never be a binary choice. Otherwise, if we allow this to become a binary choice, it would be like this Spielberg movie, Back to the Future, where you travel to the future only to encounter the problems of the past. So, the essence of the new package, and I think the easiest way to describe it is like a house with 3 floors. The first floor is a very strong external dimension centered around strengthened partnerships with countries of origin and transit. The second is a robust management of our external borders. And the third is firm, fair internal rules of solidarity so that those who are under pressure can have the certainty that the rest of the family can give them a hand. Very quickly to take you through the 3 main floors, and then the Commissioner will provide more detail on each of them. I'm starting with the external dimension and the relations with countries of origin and transit. Europe needs neighbors, partners in the world to manage migration flows, and the change of paradigm we are presenting today will mean that we will work upstream with all our partners to make sure that this is the case. Since 2015, we have dedicated over 9 billion euros to support refugees and migrants outside the EU, providing life-saving assistance to millions of vulnerable people, supporting host communities and international organizations. What we will be doing with countries of origin and transit will have a double objective. First, to help them help their people so that they can have a better life with more opportunities in their countries instead of putting their lives in the hands of the smugglers in the Mediterranean or the Aegean. And second, we want to do more for their countries themselves so that we can help them break the business model of the smugglers, help them establish better, effective border management, asylum and reception systems, returns and readmissions. And with the Pact, you will see that we're stepping up cooperation in all these areas. And in our relations with third countries, this will be based on win-win partnerships. We will support these partnerships in a way that makes sense for both these countries and ourselves. And this will include strategic, flexible, policy-driven funding from the EU. And as you know, in our proposals for the Neighbourhood Development International Cooperation Instrument, which comes with the unpronounceable abbreviations NDICI, we already have reserved over 70 billion euros including a 10% target for migration-related action. On the second floor, the robust management of the external borders. There will be new and mandatory screening at all borders of all arrivals under the new system. Currently, the only obligation is for a member state to take the fingerprints of someone who arrives irregularly and simply registers. Under the new pact, all arrivals will be subject to a thorough security, health and identity check, and this will allow for immediately directing people immediately to the right procedure. In a second stage, all those unlikely to get asylum will have to go, because they come from countries with a low recognition rate, they will have to go through mandatory fast-track border procedures with streamlined processes for dealing quickly with asylum claims and efficiently processing returns. This will create a seamless procedure at our external border, which ensures people are quickly guided to the right procedure and avoids black holes and bottlenecks like the ones we're having in the current system, or may I say, in the current non-system. And this will be, of course, the emphasis on borders will be complemented by a new European ecosystem geared towards effective returns, with a new EU coordination on returns in DG Home under Commissioner Johansson, and Frontex playing a role, a much more operational role, becoming an operational arm on border management. And as we proved in Evros at the beginning of March, Europe can now effectively ensure border management. Finally, on the third floor of our theoretical house, you will find firm but fair internal rules and solidarity. You know, the President said it nicely. She said, we are not discussing whether we will have solidarity, but how this solidarity will provide it. So we have devised a system of permanent, effective, constant solidarity that would give at all times the assurance that the member state that is under a specific type of situation can obtain the level of help that needs from the system. So this strong solidarity mechanism will, of course, not ignore the red lines, but we have looked for a solution between the red lines. And we have done so by introducing a new concept, which we call returns sponsorship, that allow to do something that is new. And let me take a minute to explain. This is a concept that seeks to balance out competing interests. We know that all member states will never accept mandatory relocation. That's one thing we know already. At the same time, relocation, and not only sending help or border guards, is what really alleviates pressure from member states facing high numbers of arrivals. So with this return sponsorship, we are providing a viable alternative to ensure that even if they are not relocated, the same numbers can be catered for. And the member state under pressure, we can ask for the member states willing to perform this return sponsorship help, and that would take the system into some sort of balance and equilibrium. And sponsoring member states, of course, will be able to focus on nationalities where they see a better chance of completing returns. And the system will always allow for this interdependence between an alternative to relocation and effective support. And depending on the level of pressure and the ability of our systems to cope, we are confident that we will at all times provide this assurance of permanent, constant, effective solidarity. And the solidarity situation will be structured along three work streams, three typologies of solidarity. Depending on the situation that the member state finds itself, can activate the relevant procedures, and we have identified and we're proposing three work streams for this. a crisis situation, a search and rescue situation, and a situation of pressure or risk of pressure. For each of these three strands, we will have specific criteria for effective and permanent solidarity. We are not stopping there. We do not forget that there are a number of elements that we will continue to prepare and will come out at a later second stage. First, Schengen. We do not forget that this is the most important, most crucial of the topics, and we will present next year a strategy for the future of Schengen. And legal migration, something that we want to be very ambitious on, but which deserves its own moment, its own narrative, divorced from the discussions on irregular migration. This is why today we have launched a public consultation to gather views on this topic, and proposals will follow next year. Let me conclude. This is a new system. It's a new, fresh beginning. It is a connected whole. Everything connects to everything else. And we are confident that this new European framework can allow for a rational, proper, logical management of migration policy in Europe. We have withdrawn and drawn a line under the former Dublin system. It was symbolic of an era that is different. Dublin was meant for very few asylum seekers fleeing dictatorship from southern Europe. Dublin was not meant to face up the challenges of global migration Europe is facing today and will continue to face in the future. Let me finish with saying that we are very proud of the European Union. We are the biggest and the better regulated market in the world. We have the second global currency. We have universal systems of education, of health. We have no death penalty. We take care of our elderly. We have a fantastic recovery plan based on a new novel approach. It's unthinkable that this Europe in 2020 still does not have a proper, single, cohesive migration and asylum policy. We hope that today is the beginning of a process that will take us there.
Thank you very much. Vice President, Commissioner, please, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much. Migration has defined our societies for centuries, enriched our cultures and shaped our lives. So said President von der Leyen in her State of the Union speech. And I think this is very crucial. Migration is normal. Migration has always been here. Migration will always be here. Sometimes in the debate we try to make a link between migration and crisis, but most of the migrants that come to the European Union come here legally. Last year, 2.4 million migrants got a resident permit in the European Union. Most of them because they fell in love with the EU citizen and they marry, but also for other family reasons, to work here, to study here, and also some that got asylum. Last year, around 1 million left the European Union. And that means that we have an extra 1.5 million people coming to the European Union every year. And we need them because we're an aging society. And many of those are being European citizens. Last year, almost 700,000 new European citizenship were issued. So this works quite well, I should say, and we need migration. But on the headlines in the news is of always what's not worked so well. And that is the situation with the irregular arrivals. Last year, we had 140,000 irregular arrivals to the European Union. And this is really what we are addressing now in our proposal to manage in a much better way. And I think that when we are discussing the proposal that we now have put on the table, I understand that a lot of people still are in the mood of the situation in 2015, but we are not there. In 2015, we had 1.8 million irregular arrivals to the European Union, and almost all of them were refugees. As I said, last year, 140,000 irregular arrivals, and a minority of them, 1/3, were refugees. The others are not refugees, and they will have a negative asylum decision and a return decision. And that shows also what we need to address better is the effectiveness on returns and readmission to the countries of origin. What we need to do is to move away we need fewer irregular arrivals and instead have more regular arrivals. That's why we have to focus on legal pathways, both for migrants to come to contribute to our economy and for refugees that need international protection. And I'm very proud that the European Union are doing so much when it comes to resettlement of refugees. And we are also in our proposal, having a proposal to step up on that with a new community-sponsored resettlement. To be able to have fewer irregular arrivals, we need to fight the human smugglers. These are well-organized criminal networks that are earning a lot of money by smuggling people into the European Union. And at the same time, a lot of people have to risk their lives. This is not how it should be done. And that's, as Margrethe just pointed out, the importance of working very close together with third countries, with our partner countries, to fight the smuggling together. We also need to focus more on returns. And that's, you can see in our package today, there's a lot of new initiatives when it comes to be more effective on returns. And I'm coming back to that. One of the importance is, of course, to have good readmission agreements with third countries, and that's going to be prioritized. I would like to go through how we should address the problems and the challenges that we are facing. And as Margrethe rightly said, we had to have a lot of dialogues with member states, with parliament, with other stakeholders to listen, where are the shortcomings without a common European migration and asylum system. And these we are addressing in our proposal to be able to manage migration better. Of course, it's fundamental to defend the right to apply for asylum. And that means that it's also fundamental how we protect our borders, that we do it in a way that is in compliance with the Geneva Convention and the right to apply for asylum. We will propose a new monitoring and independent monitoring mechanism for all member states to implement and in guidance with the European Agency for Fundamental Rights to make sure that they are not being pushed back at the borders. When an irregular arrival comes to the European Union, there will be a mandatory screening process. This will take maximum 5 days. There you will do the registration, of course, into the Eurodac. And in Eurodac we will have much more information with our new proposal than in the current one. You can find out also whether this person has been in Europe before, for example, and already have a decision maybe. There will also be security checks, health checks, and a decision on which country is responsible for this application and which kind of procedure should this person go through. If these asylum applicants have a connection to another member state, like having a sibling there, have been working there, have studying there, then the other member state is responsible for the application and to process that. If the person is coming from a country with a very low recognition rate, under 20%, and it's not a family with small children, it's not an unaccompanied minor, it's not a person with medical needs, then this person should go to a border procedure. And this border procedure has the same rights for the person to have his or her application processed in a proper and fair way. But it has to be done very quickly. And I think that many of those will have a negative decision, but not all of them. Some will have a positive, and then, of course, they have the asylum in the country. Why do we do this? We do this because it will make it easier for voluntary returns. I think when a person has been living in a country for years, having relations, falling in love, then it's much more difficult, both for the individual and for the authorities, to do the return to the country of origin. It's important that we can have this decision of returns very quickly, in 12 weeks, and then also be able to do the returns. This is also an important message, that you will be returned if you are coming to the European Union and do not have the right to stay. And I think this is what the European citizens ask from us. I think they say, well, we are ready to welcome those in need of international protection. We are ready to welcome those that have the legal right to work or study in our union. But those who do not have the legal right to stay, they have to go back. And this is what we are really focusing on in our proposal. If, as Margrethe said, it's also important that we have a solidarity mechanism. Of course, all member states have to deal with migration because migration is a normal thing. But there could be a situation where the migration pressure is high or risk of being high. And then there is a possibility to activate the solidarity mechanism. And as President von der Leyen just said a few minutes ago, solidarity is not optional. Everybody has to contribute to the solidarity. But there are some possibilities to choose in what way to show your solidarity. The two main ways to show solidarity is either via relocation of those probably in need of international protection, or with a new return sponsorship, where member states are helping each other to actually do the returns of those not eligible to stay and make sure that they will be reintegrated in their country of origin. This solidarity mechanism will also work for search and rescue cases. Search and rescue is a responsibility for the member states or the coastal states, of course. And saving lives is, of course, always essential and always our obligation. But we must also make sure that when persons that have been saved, search and rescued and saved at sea are being disembarked in the European Union, they are being disembarked in the European Union, not only in a member state. And that's why we need this solidarity, showing that also other member states must help with the relocation of people that are being disembarked through search and rescue, or in other ways supporting the member state where they are being disembarked. I will end with what's also important here, is that we should have more predictability. And I think today in college, one of our colleagues told the story of 13 unaccompanied minors coming to her country, being relocated from Lesbos and being welcomed. And I think there is such a huge difference when you have the names of those coming, when you know what flight they are coming with. It's so much easier for a country to welcome these and to have a swift integration. It's the unpredictability, it's much more difficult to deal with. And this is our aim, to have more of a Europeanized system where we help each other to have a more predictability in the system, so that we should not be surprised, so we can deal with the situation before they become a crisis. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Commissioner. Yes, the Vice President wishes to add something.
Dana, if you give me the floor before the question, simply to say that I apologize, because the film Back to the Future is a film by Zemeckis, not by Spielberg, as I said. So, mea culpa, mea maxima culpa. On Hollywood, I'm not that strong.
With that clarification, I now open the floor to your questions. At this stage, we will try to keep the questions focused on the subject of the press conference, on the Migration and Asylum Pact. As always, please indicate in the system by raising your hand if you wish to ask a question. I see quite a number of them already raised, so the first question will be for David. David, go ahead.
Thank you very much, Dana. David Carretta, Radio Radicale. J'ai une première question pour le vice-président Schinas à propos de Moria. Parce que dans votre rôle précédent, en 2016, mars 2016, vous avez annoncé une armée de fonctionnaires européens pour aider les îles grecques, la Grèce, a implémenté la déclaration Union européenne-Turquie, donc à tenir les migrants sur les îles. 1500 gardes frontières de Frontex, 400 experts EASO, 400 interprètes, 30 juges, des bateaux, des avions. Et en 5 ans, vous avez versé à la Grèce 2,6 milliards d'euros. Donc, ma question est très simple. Vous avez dit Moria, c'est la cause de l'absence de l'Europe. Comment expliquez-vous que cette aide européenne n'a pas produit de résultats? My second question is for Commissioner Johansson. I mean, if I go back to what the Commission proposed and other actors, member states and so on, I can find a lot of points that are in this new or fresh start. The Malta Agreement is more or less the same of the relocation for search and rescue system that you are proposing. The flexible relocation or flexible solidarity is the same of the effective solidarity proposed by the Slovak presidency in 2016. I can go on with the new migration partnership framework for the third countries proposed in June 2016, with the incentive and disincentive to readmit migrants. Even the border procedure that you are announcing, I can see a lot of elements that should have been applied in Moria and the Greek island because Turkey was considered a safe country. So what is really new in your proposal? Thank you.
Thank you, David. Mr. President.
Okay, let me start on Moria and Lesbos. When the fire occurred in Lesbos, in Moria, which was of course a tragedy, we were, oddly enough, in a rather virtuous path because arrivals were very low or non-existent, and with the help of the Hellenic authorities and our partners and member states, we have managed to bring down the overall population from 25,000 to around 12,000 when the fire broke out. And we had also managed to relocate unaccompanied minors. Practically all of them, the 400 final ones, came out after the fire. So probably one should not underestimate that a lot of work has been done already there before the fire. And of course, always the good is the enemy of the better, and things may have been done differently, and the implementation of the EU-Turkey agreement would have been faster. But still, even if all this had happened, that would have never changed the fundamental, which is Moria is a symptom of a system that is a non-system. It's something that is there because precisely there is nothing else to prevent it from being there. And this something else is what we're doing today. The overall amount of EU support to Greece is 2.5, not only to Moria, not only on Lesbos, and I think it's an argument now that is verging on the fake news. We never paid 2.5 billion for Lesbos. This is the overall envelope, including all reception centers in the whole country, including subsidies for rent for thousands of migrants. So I would plead not to oversimplify on issues that are so delicate and so polarizing. I would also make a call for a more sober approach. And one should not forget, David, that we still have around more than 400 people on Lesbos. People from EASO, people from Europol, people from Frontex. I saw them, I met them, I was there. They are dedicated European civil servants doing the best they can to help a very difficult situation. And the task force that the College announced today is precisely yet another attempt to Europeanize the management of this very difficult situation in a way that helps both the refugee population and migrants the local authorities and the national authorities. Now, Ilva will reply to you on what is new, but let me tell you how surprised I am that in less than an hour you managed to digest 10 legislative texts and come to the conclusions that there is nothing new and that everything is reheated. I always admire your approach to things, but this is well commenting. No, this is new. This is really new. And I know, and I have suffered it for many years, that in this city and in this bubble, there is what I would like to call an intellectual appeal of pessimism. That if in Brussels you are a pessimist, it's okay. It's people deal with you, like you trend. I am of the school of the intellectual appeal of optimism. And I think that it's our duty to emit a signal of optimism today with this new beginning.
Thank you. I will answer to your question. You are wrong. There are not these old building blocks into the new ones. All of the building blocks that we have in this proposal are new ones. It's not, the border procedures are not linked to safe countries. The Malta Declaration is not in there, but there is a solidarity towards search and rescue cases and disembarkation. The solidarity has some flexibility, but it's not totally flexible. It's mandatory to show solidarity, and you can choose between return sponsorship and relocation. But you're also right in one way, because managing migration is not rocket science. It's being dealt with all the time and for all times. But what the thing is that we're not managing migration well enough in the European Union. And that's because we are lacking the common approach and the common balanced legislation. And this is really what's new here, that this is a balanced approach. And I guess that we will have 27 member states, that none of them are satisfied with our proposal. But I think that we will have 27 member states and Parliament that will say, it's worth working on this. It's a balanced proposal. And this is new.
Thank you very much, Commissioner. I will now give the floor to Stefan. Stefan, are you there? Can you hear us? Stefan, I understand that your mic source is not selected in the right way. Stefan, can you connect? Are you on the line? It doesn't seem to be the case, so I will revert to you later, and I will now give the floor to Athanasios, hoping that he is available. Yes. Absolutely.
I am available. Thanks very much. Bonjour. Could you please give us 3 practical examples of solidarity under the 3 scenario, like the crisis scenario, the expected load scenario, and normality? What would be solidarity in practical terms from the member states towards who feel the pressure? 3 practical examples. Second, how are you going to improve? I did not read all the legislative proposals, but how are you going to improve the accountability of the use of funds that are connected to these proposals? And thirdly, since we have a teleconference of the President von der Leyen with the President of Turkey, Erdogan, tonight, are they going to talk about the Migration Pact as well in that video conference? Thanks.
Yeah, I'll start with first on the solidarity. The main blocks in our solidarity mechanism are 2. You can choose between relocating those that are probably in need of international protection, or you can do the return sponsorship of those that have a return decision. This is how member states help a member state that is under pressure, because they have more migrants than they can deal with in a situation. That could be in a crisis, then it has to go quicker and be a bit sharper, and that could be for a pressure situation where you have a little bit more time to work with this, of course, depending on the situation. And for the search and rescue cases, we are also looking into other possibilities to show solidarity, so it's even a little bit more flexible.
On your question on Turkey, the Commissioner and I took office on Monday the 2nd of December, if I'm not mistaken. I don't think I am. Wednesday the 4th, we were in Athens after the first college meeting, and Thursday the 5th, we were in Ankara. And we did that because we, at the time, as it is the case now, we were pretty sure that the European Union will absolutely need a solid, working, functional, operational framework cooperation with Turkey, with all our neighbors, as I was referring to earlier, but Turkey in particular. And the 2016 EU-Turkey statement, which navigated through very turbulent waters and ran through difficulties of implementation, at the end of the day, provided that framework. And it's in our mutual interest, even in turbulent times, not to lose the perspective of a cooperation, of effective cooperation with Turkey. This is our belief, this is our will, this is the college line, and we are hopeful that in this process of de-escalation of tensions in Eastern Mediterranean, migration will again be a part of the positive agenda. No need to remind you that only last summer we paid more than 500 million euros to Turkey, precisely to continue cooperating on this road.
Thank you very much. As to your more specific question about the video conference planned between the President von der Leyen and President Erdogan this afternoon, it will cover, like always in discussions between leaders, all matters of joint interest. I would be very happy to provide you a readout following the video conference for more details. Et maintenant, je continue la série des questions et je vois que Christian, il est intéressé à poser une question. Christian, est-ce que tu es là?
Oui, vous m'entendez?
Oui, ça va. Vas-y, Christian.
Alors, j'ai deux petites questions pour la commissaire Johansson et une question pour Margrethe Schinas. Pour Madame Johansson, vous avez insisté beaucoup sur ce nouveau pacte sur les retours. Or, les retours, depuis près de 10 ans, sont l'échec de la politique migratoire de l'Union européenne. Et donc, ma question est très simple. Dans les relations avec les pays tiers et avec les pays de transit, est-ce que vous avez prévu ou est-ce que vous avez retenu l'idée de sanctions pour les pays qui refuseraient de reprendre leurs ressortissants ou d'accepter des gens que l'on veut renvoyer chez eux? Et ma deuxième question, elle concerne les sauvetages, qui sont aussi un autre point d'achoppement, qui ont fait échouer toutes les tentatives de la précédente commission. Est-ce que vous n'avez pas peur que les États membres redoutent ce qu'on appelle l'effet d'appel d'air ou l'effet d'aubaine, à savoir que avec ces nouvelles dispositions de solidarité pour les sauvetages en mer, les passeurs envoient plus de bateaux et les ONG plus de bateaux aussi. Et pour Margrethe Schinas, une question, parce qu'il a défendu le plan de la précédente commission. Quand il nous annonce, on a tiré un trait sur Dublin. Alors là, je suis très perplexe d'avoir tiré un trait sur Dublin. La dernière fois que la Commission européenne a essayé de tirer un trait sur Dublin, c'était Madame Malmström et elle s'est pris un vote contre de 24 États membres contre 4. Donc je voudrais savoir qu'est-ce qu'on appelle par tirer un trait sur Dublin. Est-ce que la règle qui veut que le pays du premier arrivant traite la demande va sauter ou est-ce que non, on aménage Dublin, ce qui est une autre question qui est en fait un peu ce que vous avez tenté de faire par dans le dernier collège. Merci.
Thank you. Commissioner?
Yes, first on returns. With the European Union, we have readmission agreements with 24 countries. Not all of them work, but many of them works actually. And I think that to be better, have better agreements with third countries, we should do that in cooperation with third countries and in partnership and finding win-win situation. And this is really what I'm doing right now, together with Jutta Urpilainen for African countries, together with Oliver Wiley for the neighboring countries. And I was in Mauritania last week that we discussed these things. I was in Tunisia last month also to discussing these things. So this is really what we are doing. But so I don't think that we should threaten countries. I think it's better to find partnership. But we have a new legislation that came into force in February this year about visa decisions. And that makes that the European Commission will make reports for all countries on how well they cooperate on readmission and returns. And that can have an implication on whether they should have a positive or a negative effect on the visa regulation that we have with that country. So this is also what already is here, and I'm really looking forward to start using this new legislation. The search and rescue, will they be more? No, they will not. Not according to our proposal. It will be the opposite, I guess. What we see now, especially in the Central Med, a lot of people that are coming there are not refugees. And if they are being disembarked and immediately go through a screening process and a border procedure, and they will have the return decision very quickly, and they will be returned. I think this will also help to people to think twice before paying a lot of money to the smugglers and before risking their lives going into these very dangerous boats. I don't think so. But it's also important that we have a better cooperation when we deal with search and rescue. And that's why we're also putting on the table a recommendation where the Commission will help coordinating these efforts that are being taken by the member states, of course, but also of the private vessel, the NGOs, and together with international organizations, so that we shall have a better predictability for the disembarkations, for example. Thank you.
Okay, on Dublin, Christian, I would again suggest, and we have time for a more thorough look at the documents, because actually one has to read through the new approach to comprehend the difference between the previous one. What I can tell you is, of course, I said it in my statement, that what we are doing is we are putting Dublin to bed. And we start afresh with a new, much broader framework. And I would say, if you allow me the self-congratulatory tone, a smarter approach. What we are doing now is enlarging the criteria, and we are creating a hierarchy of criteria which is new. So the country of first entry is not the top and only consideration, is part of this hierarchy criteria and is at the bottom of this hierarchy criteria. As the Commissioner said, we are enlarging the scope, and we have first what is the best interest of the child, second family reunification, 3 visas, 4 academic qualifications, and 5 country of first entry. And on the family reunifications, we also open up the definition to include siblings. So this shows that Dublin, okay, we can still discuss if you want to put it in bed or put it on side or leave it behind, but what we are having here is something totally new, totally different.
Now I would like to give the floor to Griselda. I hope you are on the line, Griselda. Can you hear us?
Yes. Merci beaucoup. Je crois qu'il y a, excusez-moi, traduction à l'espagnol. Donc, avec la permission de Madame Johansson, j'aimerais bien utiliser le fait que M. Margaritis parle aussi bien cette langue pour poser ma question en español y attendre une réponse dans la même langue. Si entiendo bien la propuesta, ustedes abren hoy por primera vez la posibilidad de un reparto de inmigrantes sin derecho al asilo a través de este sistema de vuelos nacionales de retorno. ¿Podrían, por favor, explicar en qué consiste exactamente esto? Si hay un cupo por Estado miembro, si los inmigrantes sin derecho al asilo que lleguen a un país distinto al país de entrada se quedan allí para siempre si el vuelo de retorno falla o vuelven al país por el que han entrado. Muchas gracias.
Bueno, Griselda, esto es una pregunta muy así sencilla para describir una situación que es mucho más compleja, pero lo voy a intentar. Lo que proponemos en este sistema de solidaridad permanente y eficaz es asegurarnos que los países que activan, que piden la solidaridad en cada una de estas tres situaciones, search and rescue, presión o riesgo de presión o crisis, pueden pedir lo que les hace falta para afrontar esta situación en la que se encuentran. Si lo hacen, cuando lo hacen, la Comisión, porque el sistema es un sistema europeo, interviene y organiza la solidaridad que hace falta, según el tipo de la situación. De más intensidad en relocalizaciones y retornos en situaciones de crisis, un poco distinta en situaciones de search and rescue y depresión. Pero el sistema funcionará siempre de la misma manera. El que pide solidaridad tiene que tener y tendrá la certeza que recibirá lo que pide. Y esto lo haremos con unas rondas primero, habrá un banco de solidaridad que cada año tendremos a nuestra disposición como cuestión de principio. Habrá una segunda ronda donde buscaremos lo que no tenemos y habrá al final un papel para la Comisión con un acto de la Comisión de imponer, decidir, definir la parte que nos hace falta. Esto es el sistema. Ahora, entiendo que tu pregunta tiene que ver con lo que se llama en inglés return sponsorship. No sé cómo se llama en español. Parenajes de retornos, digo yo. Pero este es un tema, lo explicó bien la comisaria, donde los estados que lo asumen en nombre de los estados que lo piden tendrán la obligación de organizar estos retornos en países donde pueden, donde saben, donde creen que lo pueden conseguir. Si no es el caso, si después de 8 meses, que es bastante tiempo para organizar los retornos, esto no lo consiguen, esta obligación se transformará en obligación de la relocalización. O sea, esto es el sistema que estamos diseñando. Es un poco, lo admito, un poco amplio, pero invito a todo el mundo a leer los papeles y ver cómo funciona.
Thank you very much. I will now give the floor to Franziska, who's the next on my list. Franziska, are you on the line? Franziska, can you hear us? Are you there? This doesn't seem to be the case.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, please go ahead.
Yes, please go ahead. Perfect. Thank you very much. I have one question for Commissioner Johansson. You spoke about the pre-screening or the border control that should happen for every asylum seeker. And I would like to know, you said it's only 5 days that it should last. How do you want to ensure that it's only 5 days? And will it be under the responsibility of the national state where they are, or under the EU? And then you also mentioned the accelerated asylum procedure for some applicants. That should be up to 12 weeks. I would like to know, where should all these people stay then at that time? Because, I mean, 12 weeks is 3 months. Will there be more camps then built on the islands in Greece and on the island Italy? Because, I mean, 3 months, should they sleep in tents? Like, I don't know, what do you foresee? And how do you want to make it possible that really it's done in this time? Because at the moment, it's not happening.
First, we should have no more camps like Moria. I think that's very obvious. What we need is swifter and more efficient procedures. So the screening procedure will take place at the border, and it's a responsibility for the member state to do that. But of course, the European agencies are also happy to help and to be there to support. And I think 5 days should be enough to do the fingerprints, the health checks, and the security checks, and to take the decision on what kind of procedures that should be. Then for the border procedures, it should ideally take place near the borders, but we are not that stiff in our proposal. It's also possible to have somewhere else for the practical reasons. And I think that 12 weeks is a quite quick process. And that's what we'd like to have, because I think this is one of the shortcomings today, that a lot of migrants are left in limbo without decision. And I think this is not good for the individual and for sure not good for our European system or for societies. You should have your decision. And if you're coming from a country with a very low recognition rate, I should say that that will be not the most difficult issues to deal with. Of course, you have to go through an individual process for that. And then you will have the decision, and then you will have your return decision. And I'm quite sure that this will lead to the situation where those that know that they will not have the right to asylum actually think twice or even more time before they enter irregular to the European Union. And that's actually the aim, because today 2/3 of those coming to the European Union will have a negative asylum decision. But many of them stay for years in our union without really having the right to stay here. And this is not acceptable. This is what we have to deal with.
Thank you, Commissioner. Allow me to also remind journalists that we will also have a technical briefing following this press conference, so you can ask many detailed questions there as well with our knowledgeable experts. I will now give the floor to Victor, the next on my list. Victor, are you there? You need to press speak, like always, for us to hear you. So, Victor?
Okay,
yes.
Sorry. I hope you can hear me now. Mr. Schinas, you have talked about the wounds caused by mandatory quotas. I would just like to clarify things. Is there in your proposal, in any part of it, some kind of mandatory quotas, so let's say under extraordinary circumstances where there are hundreds of thousands of migrants or asylum seekers, refugees coming to Europe? Is there any possible scenario where there would be a mandatory quota imposed on a state that doesn't agree to it? And if so, how would you convince anti-migration leaders such as Viktor Orbán, Andrej Babiš and others to agree with your package and not to use this part as a weapon to say simply no, as they have been saying so far? Thank you very much.
I may answer that. There is no mandatory quotas for relocation in no circumstances in our proposal. But there could be quotas, but then you can choose between relocation and return sponsorship.
Thank you. I will now, yes, the question on how we convince leaders.
Okay. How can we convince leaders? First of all, I think that if one takes a closer look and with some cool-headedness of what we're putting on the table today, I think he or she should recognize that our start is different. We are doing things anew. We have a new, fresh beginning, bringing together everything that we think matters to everybody else in a way that the overall equilibrium is attained. Because if we would have given the full maximum of everybody's expectation, then that would be a non-starter. Everybody knows that you cannot reconcile the maximum of expectation. So we hope that this capital of trust that we are starting building today will be recognized across the geography of the European Union. We had a very encouraging meeting this morning in the college with Ilva, where we were very encouraged from the unanimous support of our colleagues representing different sensitivities, political, geographic and others. And we very much hope that in the days and the weeks that follow, everybody will make an effort to take a more positive look of what we're trying to do here. And we also hope that when we enter into the legislative process, both legislators will be able to concentrate on what unites, not on what polarizes. And if this process works, then I'm confident that we can have a second big historic agreement for a Europe that delivers after last July's agreement on the recovery package.
Thank you very much. The next one on my list is Alexandra. So, Alexandra, I hope that you are connected and you can take the floor.
Yes, hello, do you hear me?
Yes, all good. Go ahead.
Yes, okay. A question regarding the crisis mechanism of the Pact. Do you have a specific threshold in mind for when member states can trigger the mechanism, and is it up to the member state to decide? And also follow up to Athanasios' question, if I may, where do you exactly see the role of Turkey in this proposed pact, especially when it comes to the returns?
Go ahead.
A member state can ask to activate the crisis or the pressure situation. It's the Commission who assess whether this is the case or not.
Yes, and just to complement this point, we are talking about a crisis. We're talking about a high threshold 2015 type of situation. Now, on Turkey, as I was saying earlier, if there is something that can be part of a positive agenda between EU and Turkey other than the areas identified in the 2016 agreement, is this renewed emphasis on our bilateral cooperation in the light of the proposal we're tabling today. Why? Because the 2016 proposal was yet another piece of a very fragmented situation. Now, everybody can see that the European Union is preparing, at last, a single policy framework for migration and asylum. And this certainty, predictability, as the Commissioner said, is not something that matters to us, but it matters also to our partners. So in such a system, I'm confident that with Turkey, not only with Turkey, but especially with Turkey, we can continue working together. And we should never forget that Turkey continues to host millions of Syrian refugees, a commendable work, as it is the case also for Jordan and Lebanon, under often very difficult circumstances.
Thank you very much. The next question goes to Thomas. Thomas, are you there? Can you hear us? Trying again. You need to select your mic source, I'm told, because we can't hear you and we can't see you for the moment.
Yes, do you hear me now?
Yes, all good. Go ahead.
Thank you very much. Can the countries that have an issue of rule of law with the European Commission offer to sponsor returns? And if a country accepts this sponsorship, is it relieved from any responsibility vis-à-vis the persons that are returned? And let me briefly say that I was surprised that you criticized journalists for not having read the papers that were published a few minutes before the beginning of these press conferences. It's true that we tend to be sometimes pessimistic, and pessimism is not always good, but enthusiastic journalists, they tend to live in countries where I'm sure that neither you or me want to live. Thank you very much.
Yes, with the return sponsorship, it works like if a member state take responsibility to return a specific, these 100 people from a specific country, then they take over the responsibility for those. And of course, the same kind of regulation and rights and rules apply, whether it is a new member state or the original member state that is responsible. The principle of non-refoulement, for example, is of course there. And all this has to be carried out in a way so that the country that should accept them can identify, you will issue the travel documents, and then you're also responsible for the reintegration measures in the country of origin. The actual flight can be carried out by Frontex, but the other measures can only be carried out by another member state. And I think this is really to address the issues that we have today. We have a lot of people that are coming here that have to be returned. And this is an important part of showing solidarity, helping each other on doing these returns. And I should also say, we are stepping out in other aspects. We will appoint a return coordinator. We will also set up a network of national experts on returns. We will have a better expertise on returns from Frontex. So we will help member states to do these returns, of course, in line with fundamental rights.
Thank you. The next question will be for James. James, are you there?
Yes, hello, I'm here. Let me just quickly return to it. Thank you very much for the question. I just have a practical question about how a return sponsorship would work. I mean, presumably these returns would be taking place from countries like Italy and Greece, but being somehow overseen by countries such as Hungary and Poland. So I'd be interested in how exactly that would work. And there are elements of this proposal which do seem to carry echoes of the Visegrad Group's 2016 proposal for flexible solidarity. I just wondered how much influence did those proposals have on these, please?
No, we are not influenced by those who don't want to take relocation, but we have dialogue with all member states, and we are taking into account the shortcomings of today. And one of the big shortcomings of today is that we're not good enough on carry out returns. And I think that's why we are having so much emphasis on returns in our proposal in many aspects, including into the solidarity mechanism. And to see those countries that today are under the biggest pressure with the biggest amount of migrants, that is Cyprus number 1, Malta number 2. Small countries, and they have a lot of people there that already got a negative asylum decision. And I should say that could be actually of great help if they would have some help of doing the returns of these people.
And on the how exactly return will function, I think we just answered also to the previous question for being complete. The next person on my list is Thomas. Thomas, are you there? Can you hear us? Yes, we have Thomas on.
Yes, I can. Thank you. I'd like to raise an issue that hasn't been mentioned before, that is secondary migration. Could you please clarify which measures your plan foresees to prevent and contain secondary migration? And very specifically, under the current Dublin system, there is a time frame of 6 months in which a person can be brought back to the country of first entry. How is this going to change under your proposal? Thank you.
Yeah, it can be brought back in 6 months. We're not going to change that. But the big thing that we do is that we are closing the loopholes. Today, in the current legislation, it's possible to abscond and after 18 months turn up in another member state. We close this. And instead, we have the distribution of the asylum applications already from the beginning. And that includes also families formed in transit, siblings, those who have been working in a member state, those who have been studying in a member state, and also if they are coming on a visa and then apply for asylum, it's the country who issued the visa who will be responsible for deal with the application. So there will be a big shift. We will have more people being distributed to other member states, and we will have no people absconding and just turning up. That's the predictability.
Thank you very much. Now the floor goes to Lorne. Lorne, I hope you are there, connected.
I am indeed, Lorne Cook from the Associated Press. A question for Commissioner Johansson. Firstly, you said there won't be any camp on Lesbos, but there's obviously going to be a reception centre. Can you tell me a bit about that? Is that going to be buildings, or are we going to have more tents? Is it going to be big? You know, we had 13,000 people in Moria there for a while. I'm trying to understand how this approach is going to be consistent with European values of dignity. And for the Vice President, just can you tell me what guarantees you can give that the Commission is actually going to, in fact, enforce the rules? Because there are rules in place already. We know they're weak, and after 2015 they were managed things were managed in a bit of a panic. So I felt there was this reluctance to kind of take action against member states. We've got COVID now, so there's even more reason to step very lightly. Are you ready to get back in court again to defend these reforms?
First, the situation in Moria right now is that everybody has shelter in tents. But of course, this is not a sustainable situation. Next week, 3,000 people will be relocated out of Moria or out of Lesbos. And we need to continue doing that. We need to winterize the facilitation. And the new reception center, of course, cannot be one for 12,000 people. It, for sure, has to be in line with our European values and our European standards. And that's why the Commission, the College today, took the decision of appointing a special task force. And that's going to be under my responsibility, that we, together with the Greek authorities, together with other member states, and also with international organizations, will work better to use all the resources that we have to make sure that we can live up to the standards that European citizens and migrants could expect from us.
On implementation, both of us, when presenting this at the college, we made it clear, and I think it was understood by our colleagues, that this is not an analytical operation. This is not like a paper or a thesis. This is a design. This is the design of a system which is meant to change the situation on the ground. This is something that will make implementation much more pragmatic, easier if you like, because we will have this notion of a circuit where from the first moment that someone would arrive at the external borders of the European Union until the end of this circuit, there are well-defined procedures under the law with sufficient guarantees of efficiency, human rights, compliance to international rules, and so on and so forth. So implementation is much more difficult in the system that we're having now, which I like to call a non-system, because we have bits and pieces that require a certain check of implementation, but things would be much easier, we believe, and we hope, into this new blueprint.
Now the floor goes to Maria, hoping that she is on the line. Maria, are you there?
Yes, hello, can you hear me?
Yes, all good, go ahead.
Hello, thank you very much. I'll do this in French. Donc, Maria Audrescu pour la Libre Belgique. Je m'interroge en fait sur la question de la solidarité flexible et donc de la relocalisation volontaire. Est-ce que vous ne craignez pas que cela à terme finisse par échouer, par bloquer, puisque on ne peut pas s'attendre à ce que ce soit toujours les mêmes États membres qui se portent volontaires pour relocaliser des réfugiés, surtout que cela n'est pas toujours politiquement porteur. Finalement, ce volontarisme va dépendre de la situation politique. Il n'est pas toujours garanti. Donc, comment est-ce que vous vous assurez à ce que cela tienne sur le long terme? Et juste une deuxième question sur le principe de non-refoulement. Donc, si le mécanisme de surveillance montre qu'il y a eu des refoulements aux frontières de l'Union européenne, qu'est-ce qui se passe pour cet État membre? Merci beaucoup.
Thank you.
It's not voluntary to respond to the solidarity mechanism. It's mandatory for all member states at the end of the day to contribute to the solidarity mechanism. And the two main ways to doing that is by relocation or return sponsorship. And the reason why it's put like this is that this is the challenge we have. 2/3 of those irregular arrivals must be returned. And that's why it's important that member states also show solidarity when it comes to return sponsorship. So it's not that it's going to be a few member states that will contribute. All member states have to contribute to the solidarity mechanism. Yes, there would also, in addition to the new legislation of monitoring mechanism, independent monitoring mechanism at the borders, we are also imposing that member states should be obliged to investigate the allegation of pushbacks.
Thank you. I will now give the floor to Martin. I hope that you are there and you can connect. Martin, you need to press the speak button, as we used to say, for us to hear you. Yeah.
Sorry about that. Yes, now you can hear me. Now, you've said a few times that there will be no mandatory quotas, and it will be voluntary to relocate or take responsibility for returns. But I think you need to explain what exactly happens if there's not enough relocation offered. I understand there's a correction mechanism in the end of that, but what happens after that correction mechanism if there's not sufficient relocation offered? And then my other question is, as you know, Denmark has an opt-out in the field of justice and home affairs. Will it be possible for Denmark to opt out of certain parts of this pact, or do you see the whole as one pact, meaning that Denmark will have to accept the whole thing or can just be part of some of it? Thank you.
Thank you, Martin. I will give the floor to Commissioner. I will also remind you that we have a technical briefing afterwards which can clarify many of the very detailed questions that you have. Good ones, detailed ones as well.
Yeah, but I must say, there will be quotas, but you can choose whether you will contribute to your quota via relocation or return sponsorship or a mix of those. There is no mechanism saying that you have to do especially relocation. You can always choose a return sponsorship instead if you want. And that is because we need both relocation and return sponsorship. And I for sure think that we will also have both of those. So we have a corrective mechanism, but that's for the total, for relocation and return sponsorship together. I know there are rumors that there is, at the end of the day, a possibility where you have to take relocation instead of return sponsorship. But that's not the case. It's not in our proposal. When it comes to Denmark, Denmark already have opted out from some of these parts, and that will, of course, be the case also for the upcoming.
Very much, Commissioner. I will now give the floor to Maria from Open TV. Maria, I hope you can hear us. Are you there?
Hello, may I ask my questions in Greek?
Yes, the Commissioner.
There is translation.
No? In Greek, though, only the Vice President.
No, it's okay. Okay.
We have the answer. So you can go ahead. Yes.
Ναι, υπάρχει μετάφραση, γι' αυτό ρώτησα. Λοιπόν, δύο ερωτήσεις. Συνιστά ο υπερπληθυσμός στα νησιά κρίση? Στην Μόρια είχαμε έναν καταβλισμό για 3.000 άτομα, υπήρξαν 20.000 μετά 13. Είναι αυτοκρίση, πρώτον. Και αν ναι, η Ελλάδα μπορεί να ζητήσει στο πλαίσιο του μηχανισμού τη μεταγκατάσταση. Αν όχι, τι μπορεί να ζητήσει? Και η δεύτερη ερώτηση αφορά επειδή δεν κατάλαβα, το αναφέρω χώρες που θα αρνηθούν να προσφέρουν τη βοήθειά τους με όποιο τρόπο στο μηχανισμό.
Μαρία, για τη Μόρια τα είπαμε. Η Μόρια είναι το σύμβολο ενός παρελθόντος που θέλουμε να αλλάξουμε με αυτά που προτείνουμε σήμερα. Το τι σημαίνει κρίση, που είναι μια από τις τρεις τυπολογίες αλληλεγγύης που παρουσιάζουμε σήμερα, είναι κάτι που θυμίζει το 2015-16 όταν έχουμε μια μαζική εισρωή ροών οι οποίες θέτουν σε κίνδυνο τα συστήματα ασύλου και μετανάστευσης των κρατών μελών. Η κρίση λοιπόν είναι κάτι μεγάλο, το οποίο το ζήσαμε στο παρελθόν, το έζησε η Ελλάδα, παραλίγο να το ζήσει στον Εύρο. Κρίση θα ήταν αν είχε συντελεστεί η είσοδος, αλλά επειδή ακριβώς έγιναν τα πράγματα όπως έγιναν, αυτό που έχει σημασία είναι να ξέρεις ότι με την λογική αυτή της τυπολογίας των τριών διαφορετικών ειδών αλληλεγγύης, στο τέλος της ημέρας το κάθε κράτος μέλος που θα χρειάζεται αλληλεγγύη και θα τη ζητάει θα έχει τη βεβαίωση ότι θα την λάβει. Και ο ρόλος εκεί της Επιτροπής θα είναι καθοριστικός, όχι μόνο γιατί θα είναι αυτή που θα διαχειρίζεται την ροή και την συγκέντρωση της αλληλεγγύης που απαιτείται, για διαφορετικές δράσεις ανάλογα με το τι χρειάζεται το κάθε κράτος. Μετεγκαταστάσεις, μέσα, χορηγίες επιστροφών. Είμαστε λοιπόν στο σύστημα αυτό το σημερινό, δίνουμε την απόλυτη εγγύηση ότι και υπερβαίνουμε το δίλημμα του παρελθόντος υποχρεωτική ή εθελοντική αλληλεγγύη, το υπερβαίνουμε με αυτό που προτείνουμε σήμερα, που είναι ένα σύστημα μόνιμης, αποτελεσματικής και εξασφαλισμένης αλληλεγγύης.
Thank you very much. Next on my list is Nick. Nick, the floor is yours. Hello, Nick, are you there? You need to press.
Hi, Dana.
You need to press.
Hello, yes, I'm here. Hi there. It was just a quick follow-up on the unauthorised movements, as you call them in the documents. What sort of measures do you expect individual member states to take to, prevent those happening? Because you say you really want to sort of disincentivise them and kill them off. And if these proposals are kind of introduced and implemented in full, should that be the end to sort of irregular camps in places like northern France and here in Belgium? Should someone be able to get from southern Europe, say Greece, all the way up to the northern coast of Europe, without being stopped and potentially sent back? Thank you.
Thank you.
That I think this is a very important question that you are raising. We need to come back to a full functioning Schengen area. And that means that it should be possible to move freely in the Schengen area. And that's why it's so important that everybody that comes to the European Union irregularly are being registered and screened, and that we have a decision which country is responsible for dealing with the asylum application if the person applies for asylum. Otherwise, it might not be possible to come into the European Union if you're not allowed to. So that means we have a system and everybody should be registered, and it's easy to find with the fingerprints in the Eurodac registration who is responsible for this person if this is an asylum applicant. And it's also in our proposal that you can do this screening process also for those that you find on your territory, even if it's not at the border. So the answer is yes, and the answer is also, I think this is necessary to be able to come back to fully functioning Schengen area and trust between member states.
Thank you very much. I will now take the last three questions for today, because we will also have a technical briefing which will answer many of your questions. I will now give the floor to Patrizia. Patrizia, can you hear us?
Sure, thank you. Thank you for the floor. I have a question for Commissioner Johansson. So I'd like her to elaborate a little bit more on the solidarity mechanism in the situation of disembarkments. Is the solidarity mechanism going to be automatic, and can you please explain a little bit how it works?
Yes, the answer is both yes and no. Of course, people that are being disembarked, if they are being screened, and some of them have to go to a border procedure, and some of them might have a return decision. Those are not going to be relocated, but the others could be relocated. And of course, then what Margrethe Schinas already explained here, we will have a pre-committed pool so that we do not can get away from these ad hoc solutions, vessel by vessel, so that we know in advance where to relocate people.
Thank you very much. I will now give the floor to Danielle, hoping that this is possible technically. Danielle, are you there?
I'm there. Can you hear me?
Yes, Danielle, go ahead.
Oui, j'ai aussi une question de follow-up sur ces actions de sauvetage. Vous avez dit que les gens vont être débarqués et on va les screener, mais très concrètement, si on prend un bateau maintenant qui est dans un port européen, si on prend la situation actuelle maintenant, elle est toujours telle qu'il y a 6 ou 7 pays, pas plus, qui vont être volontaires de prendre des réfugiés. Et on ne peut pas vraiment partir du principe que cela va changer. Donc, qu'est-ce que vous allez faire s'il y a aussi que 6 ou 7 pays qui sont volontaires de prendre des réfugiés? Est-ce que ce seront toujours les mêmes qui vont prendre des réfugiés et les autres, ils vont opter pour la deuxième possibilité, ce sponsorship? Qu'est-ce que vous allez faire s'il n'y en a pas assez qui sont volontaires de prendre des réfugiés? Merci.
I think I already answered this question. There is obligation to contribute to the solidarity, and at the end of the day, you have to do it via returns or via relocation or return sponsorship. In our proposal, there is no situation where all member states have to do relocation, but in our proposal, all member states have to contribute to the solidarity mechanism.
The last question goes to Angela. Angela, I hope you are there. Yes.
Sì, ci sono, mi sentite?
There you go.
Can you hear me? Okay. Good morning. Thanks for the opportunity. Sorry to go back to the same point. You are saying that the solidarity is compulsory, but what makes solidarity compulsory? What happens to a member state if they don't choose between relocations or returns? Thank you very much.
With all due respect, I think the question was answered several times, including 10 seconds ago, and we can go through all this in the technical briefing, which will follow seamlessly. Thank you very much for your interest and for your very many questions. Thank you very much to the Vice President, to the Commissioner. And Adalbert will now take over to lead the technical briefing. Thank you.